Right, thanks for introducing me. So today we're going to talk about accessible mathematics course materials at scale, a work in progress, which is an important qualifier. It's going to be actually a series of 2 mini talks. So there's going to be Robert Barham and me from Leeds talking about what we've done in Leeds, and then Charlotte Desvages, Benjamin Goddard from the University of Edinburgh, then saying what they have been doing there. Okay, so the plan is that, again, part one, we're going to talk about Leeds. Specifically, I'm going to do a sort of sales speech for BookML, which is a tool to produce accessible materials. And then Rob is going to sort of present some evidence about the student experience in Leeds, how it's been doing. And then Charlotte and Ben are going to take over in the second half. All right. So first of all, well, thank you for coming here. Since you're here, I think you know why we do care about accessibility, but just in case, just to be on the same page. Accessibility is important because, first of all, it's an inclusivity matter. We want to make things, all the materials, we want them to be accessible to everybody. And we want the students to be able to engage with them in the way that it makes most sense for them, rather than for us. So the typical example is if a student has a vision impairment or dyslexia, they might, for example, need to change the font. They need a different font on the documents. If you give them a PDF, that's going to be hard for them to do. Then you will have to do the work of producing alternative versions. And then, of course, there's a legal obligation from 2018 that not new anymore regulations about every material having to be accessible by default. Before somebody comes and asks for accessible versions. Should be something that we do by default. Okay, now the community, it seems like we're all converging on producing HTML rather than PDFs, because HTML is the most flexible media really by far. So the regulation itself talks about the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines, and it's in the name. The Web Content Accessibility Guidelines are really, they started and they're thought for web content. So HTML is already set up in order to meeting them. And it's easy to do. There's lots of tooling, browser extensions that are going to tell you whether your web page is probably compliant or not. And so it's very easy to produce content which is accessible in this sense. Support from assistive technologies is excellent. So screen readers, for example, they interact very well with browsers. They will read the content of the page. They will signpost headings in the page. Of course, if the page is written properly, but now the point is with HTML, it's easy to produce a properly tagged page that the screen reader can understand. And for example, if you set your operating system to show everything in high contrast, then the browser is supposed to pick that up and change the colors on the page as well to make them high contrast. So there's a lot going on there. MathJax for math content will give you extra features. All of that is already available if you do HTML. And then there's another feature which is not so much related to accessibility, but it's more like HTML adapts to different screen sizes very well. Like, it's very flexible. You can read it on your phone. You can read it on a larger screen, and that's what we know we've seen students do. Students don't print PDFs anymore. Very few of them do. They just read everything from different kinds of devices, and see them also use open lecture notes on very large screens in the common areas of our school. And HTML just fluidly adapts to all these situations. PDF wouldn't do that. Okay, so let's say we want to produce HTML. Of course, the challenge is we have lots of LaTeX, and converting LaTeX to HTML, it takes work. And that's the problem we're discussing now, and that's related to how to do things at scale. So if you want everybody to produce HTML, we need to account for this LaTeX document. So there are a few good converters from LaTeX to HTML. Very few are actually good, but they are good. And we're going to talk about BookML, which is a solution built on top of the LaTeXML converter. So the converter is LaTeXML, and BookML is a package around it, which sort of tries to make it easy to use. Okay, so what does BookML do? Let's start with that. Well, it takes a LaTeX document, like this one here. But if it's unreadable, don't worry. I'm going to show some examples on properly, and then it gives you an output which looks a lot like Bookdown if you ever use that. So you're going to have a sidebar for navigation. You're going to have a bunch of tools at the top for changing the font, changing the colors, and the rest of the content is rendered in the page in a way that is readable by a screen reader, for example. And as I said, the core technology is actually LaTeXML. This is doing 99% of the work is done by this software. And BookML is just about making the conversion easy and to make the output nice. For example, with this Bookdown style on top of it. So I'm going to show you two examples for two reasons. I'm going to cheat a bit. I'm going to show you what's the best thing you can get out of BookML. So there's extra work going on in these two examples. So the first one is my own lecture notes. The lecture notes I used last year, which I didn't write by myself, but as you know, this has been in writing for decades. These are my number theory lecture notes. So this is how they look right now. There's a sidebar, as I promised before. There's a way of changing font size, for example, here, or switching to serif, if you prefer that, or to night mode. Okay, and I can also zoom with the browser itself, so everything gets bigger. And mathematics is rendered by MathJax. So you get all the good features you get from that, from MathJax, including good quality rendering. So the formulas are readable and nice. The extras that you get are, for example, this foldable environment. The answer of the exercise, if you click on it, then it's going to pop up on screen. And then you can close it again. And this you can do it just by writing exactly the HTML you want to have on screen. You put it in LaTeX. You even put this in a macro. And then BookML is going to create the code on the page, and then you can do anything you want with it. So this is one example, the number theory lecture notes. Then there is the other example I want to show you is this book, the For All Ex-Calgary textbook, Mathematical Logic. This version of the book is by Richard Zach, the University of Calgary. It's converted with BookML, so you're going to see the same features here and there. And if I open a random page, this is how it looks. Okay, now for this one, I want to spend a moment on this particular document because it has some extra accessibility features which are really nice. So let me go back to this presentation. I made a video to avoid technical problems on the spot. So the problem with this lecture notes is that there are these formal proofs written in this form with this notation, which are completely visual. Like the way you set them up is you stack symbols on top of each other, and you have a line here representing a subproof in this case. And now question, how do you make that accessible to a person who is blind? Now, this page contains extra text hidden in this table, which is not visible, but is going to be picked up by a screen reader. So let me show you how that sounds like. It's going to go very fast. So be warned, that's how screen readers are usually configured. So let's see what happens if we try to read the page. Okay. So for example, what just happened is that the mathematical content has been read.
Vincenzo, we've lost the audio. I wasn't able to hear that on my end.
Oh, sorry. Yes, I forgot to. I was just going with the flow and forgot to enable the audio. Okay, let me try again. Let's hear it again.
I'm muted in YouTube as well.
Good eye.
Heading level 3, working backward from a conditional. If our goal is to prove a conditional, script upper A right arrow script upper B application, we'll have to use right arrow application. This requires a subproof starting with script upper A application and ending with script upper B application.
Okay, so first I will make you notice that the screen reader is reading the font shape of the letters A, B. It's going to say script A, script B, because we use different shapes with different meanings. It could have been blackboard bold A, for example, and it's going to read that. Now
we'll
let's see what
set up
happens
our
with
proof
the
as follows. Table, 4 columns, 5 rows, line number, column 1 of 4, subproof level, column 2 of 4, formula, column 3 of 4, justification, column 4 of 4. Okay, so this was the header of the table, which is not visible on screen, but it's necessary to help somebody with a screen reader to navigate
the content of the table. So the header is hidden, but it's present and it's being read. So let's see what happens when you have this now, the subproof starting on this line.
Row 2 of 5, line number, N. Application, column 1 of 4. Subproof level. Open subproof, 1. Column 2 of 4. Formula, script upper A. Application, column 3 of 4.
Okay, so now the screen reader just announced that there was a new subproof being open at level 1. Now if I let it go...
Justification, blank, column 4 of 4. Row 3 of 5, line number, blank, column 1 of 4. Subproof level. 1. Column 2 of 4. Formula, vertical ellipsis. Application, column 3 of 4.
And so on. Okay, now you don't need to hear the full thing now. But the point is at each line, the screen reader is going to remind you at which subproof level you are so that you know exactly where you are on the table. And this is, I mean, I like this a lot. The way it has been implemented just by manually, so using the macros that define this type of proof. They come from a particular package. It's called Fitch. It's for Fitch style proofs. So Richard redefined these commands so that in the HTML version, they generate a specific HTML table with these extra tags in between that are read by the screen reader. And it's something you can do by with BookML, basically. Okay. So now, what actually is BookML? So if you want to use it, how do you do that? Well, at the end of the day, BookML on its own, it's a zip file. Okay. So you have to somehow install LaTeXML on your computer and all its dependencies. And this is a hard job, this one, unfortunately. So if your IT can do that, great. That's going to save you a lot of time. Suppose you can do that, then BookML is just something you unpack in the folder where you're working with your text files, and then you run make. That's one way of using it. And then everything happens, and you get lots of zip files, one for each document with all the content inside. There's another way of running it. This is now more technical. If you know what Docker is, there is a Docker image online that you can use. It contains all packages and everything. So if you do have Podman or Docker, you can just run BookML in this way with a single line. So it downloads 5 gigabytes, but once it's there, you can use it. And the third way, which I'm going to show you now again with the video, not live, because that's because I want to be sure that you actually get to see it. With Overleaf, you can now add a few files to your Overleaf project, and then you sync it to GitHub, which unfortunately requires a paid account. But once you push to GitHub, then you just wait, and then after a couple of minutes, you get an email. The email has a link where you can download the files from, and you get all these outputs containing all the HTML. I'm going to show you this now in a second. Okay, so first of all, now I should clarify, do you need to change now your text files when you do this? Maybe. Sometimes you don't. Many times you do have to make small changes, but often it's just minor changes because LaTeXML is, the advantage it has on the other converters is that LaTeXML is tested regularly on the entirety of arXiv. So the arXiv, many of you might have noticed that preprints now have an HTML experimental version, not just a PDF. Not all of them, the ones that build successfully, but those HTML pages are generated with LaTeXML. So it's really tested on a wide corpus, so it manages to deal with many things. There are packages that will break, but the nice thing is that you will get something out of it. LaTeXML is generally will try really to give you something, and then you can fix the problems at a later stage. Sometimes it just breaks, and then you're in pain, and you have to somehow manage. But it's pretty good. Okay, so let's see now this Overleaf demo. Right. So the way it works is you start with your project, you download the template from the BookML web page. In the template, there is a folder which may be hidden, the .github folder, and that's the thing you want to fish out and add to your Overleaf project. Once you do that, the next thing to do is you sync your project with GitHub. Again, this requires a paid account, unfortunately. So you choose a repository name. That needs to be without spaces, so you have to change it in this case. Go for create. You may be asked permissions. For permissions, you may have to link your GitHub account the first time you do this. But once it's done, you wait for 2 minutes. You get an email that looks like the one on the right, saying successful build, hopefully. And you see these are the commands that have been run, and these are all the output messages of whatever happened on the server. And then you click on that link. You see the same content here. And again, here you can see, again, the full output. In case there are errors, then you can inspect what really happened. And the files are at the bottom. And here you can download the SCORM demo package with all the output from there. And once you set up, this is how you work. You can keep working on Overleaf. And whenever you want to create a new version, you push it to GitHub in the same way, adding maybe a descriptive message to have a so that you can see when you receive the message which version it's referring to. So this is what happened on the GitHub servers when you do this. Again, you get an email, you go to this page, and in this page you find all the files. Now, final thing I'm going to show you about Overleaf is you can have multiple files. So in this case, I was uploading the rest of the template to Overleaf, including this BookML folder. You can do that. Again, how you proceed, you just push everything to GitHub. You don't have to do anything else. There's no configuration. Again, maybe a descriptive name just to see in the email confirmation, this is what you sent. Now, every file that contains the string document class is going to generate a different zip file. So what happens here is that I have a demo file, which was the one we started with, and then the template.txt file is also document class. Those two things are going to generate these two zip packages here. Okay. Final thing I want to show you about this technology is when you see generating zip files, but also these SCORM zip files. Now, the SCORM package is just a way of interacting well with BLEs. So let me show you how I use this now on Blackboard Ultra. Okay, but Moodle should be very similar. I never tried it myself, but it's going to be a similar process. So to upload them, I go to Add Content, Create, and then it shows SCORM package. And then from there, I just upload it. So I drag the demo package, for example, there. Almost done. I have to deselect Great SCORM, and then I save, and that's it. The package is uploaded. I can make it visible. And then if you click on it, it opens a pop-up, and the pop-up contains a page that looks exactly the same as the other ones we've seen before, with the navigation sidebar, but in this case, no, because there are no sections. But these tools to change fonts and size. And the PDF itself is also included here. You can download it from the icon in the toolbar up top. And the other SCORM package works in exactly the same way, the one for the template, just slightly different, so I'm going to show it to you. You upload it in the same way. It's a bit bigger. Again, you untick Great SCORM. Nice feature of the template, it shows you how to set this description automatically, so that it appears on your VLE right there. And again, if you open it now, it just behaves like it should. It opens this page, same style as before, same tools, night mode, serif font, whatever. And the PDFs are again included. Now, the extra feature of the template is the reason why I'm showing this to you. The template contains some code that generates different versions of the PDF as well. So this generates serif, sans serif, the sans serif large print version of the same PDF, all in one go. And it all happens every time you push this from Overleaf. Okay, so the advantages of SCORM, of using SCORM in particular, there are three of them. One is you've seen it's very easy to upload the files in this way. Conditional availability actually works with SCORM packages. So a dangerous thing with uploading HTML files directly that we discovered by accident in time, by blind time luckily, is that the files are not properly protected. If a student guesses the URL of the file, they can find it even though maybe it's not visible and you think you blocked access. With SCORM, instead, SCORM package works in the same way as a single PDF file, and it's fully supported by the VLEs. So it works properly in this way. And there are no permission issues. Some of you might have had this problem of Blackboard Ultra stripping away JavaScript, removing the math jacks from the pages, basically messing up everything, all the work you've done. That doesn't happen with SCORM. SCORM is natively supported by Blackboard Ultra, by Moodle, so it will do the right thing most of the times. Okay, so I hope I convinced you that BookML is something you might want to try. Now I hand over the presentation to Rob. He will sort of give you some evidence about how this works. Rob, I need to give you control.
Yes, please.
So just a second. Where are you? Now there are too many names. There you are.
Okay. It's not quite yet. There we go. Hello, everyone. What we're looking at here is on this slide, to the right of this slide is a chart that shows the results of a survey that Vincenzo, a colleague of ours called Christopher Ted, and myself did of all the VLE pages for all the previous semester's modules here at Leeds. We went through them one by one and categorized them into the 4 categories you see in the legend. I just want to emphasize here, not all of the good modules were using BookML. BookML was the most popular method we saw, but there was a lot in Bookdown as well. This is mainly following a stats, non-stats divide, with statisticians preferring Bookdown. As you can see from the chart, our year 1 adoption of HTML was good, but as things progressed, things dropped off. I don't expect that trend to continue. Our first year is currently the first year of our all new curriculum. So as that rolls through, all the level 3, level 2, level 5 modules are going to be replaced. We've supported staff to make this transition through a series of drop-in sessions run by a group of us. We sit in a room, people drop in, and we help them get BookML set up, or we troubleshoot issues with particular packages or such. We tend to run these at times when people are starting to think about getting their module set up for the next semester. Attendance is pretty good. We're usually quite busy in the sessions, I would say. But Vincenzo and I wanted to evaluate HTML, BookML, and Bookdown's reception amongst our students. So for an initial step in this process, we ran a focus group with students from our final year. We chose our final year because, remembering that chart on the previous slide, they've seen a lot of different formats during their degrees. We were able to provide an incentive payment to our participants, kindly funded by an education development scheme for the Leeds School of Maths called Delta. Our group had 4 students, a mixture of he, him, and she, her pronouns, a mixture of home and international, and joint and single honour students. Those facts, the mix, we all learnt that in the meeting itself. We didn't ask for any personal information beyond names when recruiting. This was designed to be a starting point for an ongoing project rather than a standalone end of story kind of thing. So we made it as simple as possible. This means in particular that we don't know if any of our participants were neurodiverse or disabled in any way. We showed them out of the box LaTeX compiled PDF, and they were not impressed. Like a textbook from the 90s, came out of one mouth reflexively without stopping to touch anything else. Another group member said that it hurt their eyes. I followed up on that. It wasn't meant totally hyperbolically. They meant that they needed to take breaks more frequently when working from PDF than from HTML. And when they took their eyes off the page or the screen, it took them a lot longer to return to where they left off than it did with other formats. But despite such strong feelings, they wouldn't mention it to their lecturers. One student said that how the lecturer chose to format their lecture notes was their business and they wouldn't say anything. Another one said when a module only used PDF, it's not detrimental, but it can be annoying. I think this displays something of a difference in opinion as to what it means for a module to be successful. This one particular student felt that the module was a success if and only if they learnt the maths and anything else wasn't important. Not all students are like that, but I know at least one is, thanks to this focus group. We then showed them some documents compiled with BookML, and they were generally more positive. The navigation sidebar that Vincenzo was showing off was very popular, and when our colleagues had included some of the HTML features, such as the foldable environments, those were also appreciated. In lecture notes exercises where the solution was not visible, was hidden away in a foldable environment, was particularly loved by our group. One of them reported that it made them much more likely to actually try the exercises for themselves before reading the solution in the notes. And they all felt that it made navigation easier, finding where you wanted to start off or where you were left off last time much easier. Some of these HTML features were preferred even when an equivalent feature is present in PDF. The navigation sidebar in HTML documents is beloved. The same sidebar in PDF was hidden away and never touched at all. But despite that, most of our group reported that they wanted both HTML and PDF. About half of our group revised by making annotations on their notes, and they much preferred doing that on PDFs. Searching for a particular word or term was considered much more convenient in PDF than HTML, a sort of mirror image of the navigation sidebar issue. And one of them used HTML versions when available, but they had the PDFs downloaded so that they could work without the internet. I think that's what surprised me most about what we learnt in this focus group, that providing a wide variety of formats doesn't just let a student find their most optimal format and use it, but individual students make use of the variety for different modes of study, such as using the HTML when preparing for lectures and using the PDF when revising. I was less surprised, but still pleased to hear that our students felt that transitioning to HTML was important, even if they didn't tell us that without us paying them to tell us that. It was something that they wanted and appreciated. I came away from the discussion feeling that our efforts to transition to HTML it's not just an act of legal compliance, but it's also something that improves the student experience for the whole student body. And that's it from me. I'll hand you back over to Vincenzo, who wants to mention some things we didn't mention.
Right, okay. Just a second to stop remote control. Right. Okay, I think I'll be overly quick now with this mouthful of time. I just wanted to say, just to be transparent and honest, there is a large group of people using BookML in our School of Mathematics, and there are two people, Matthew Aldridge and Sergei Komisarov, that really kickstarted the process by creating internal guides. There is a special separate effort by Joao Faria Martins for commutative diagrams specifically. So he has his own system with LBORP. It's actually, you can see online a guide for how to do that. And I have to thank Martin Lopez Garcia, who is our accessibility and inclusivity lead for the School of Maths in the faculty, that really helped us sort of break through the wall of people telling us, why don't you use our PowerPoint template, which is going to be accessible? Every time, okay, no, let's have a conversation. And so we have an online guide listing all these tools and linking to all this BookML and these other manuals that I mentioned. And very quickly, I should thank Matthew Towers, person I don't know, who was speaking about this online in 2019. He mentioned LaTeXML specifically, otherwise I don't know what would have happened. Of course, I'm a critic for advocating Bookdown often, and that's how we ended up with what we have now. And of course, above all, the LaTeXML developers, they're doing a fantastic job, amazing job at creating this tool. Bruce Miller from the National Institute of Standards and Technology, and Dejan Ginev, who now works at arXiv, again as a consultant on LaTeXML. All right, that's all from Leeds. I'm going to stop here.
Okay, thanks, Vincenzo. So we're going to tell you a bit about BookML in Edinburgh, in particular how we've been trying to implement it in the school-wide level and also across other schools at the university. So in terms of a bit of background, we had the same problems, issues as Leeds, which is that we really do require an accessible approach that goes beyond LaTeX-generated PDFs. Part of the thing that spurred this on was that we've recently switched to Blackboard Ultra, and one of its features, alongside other ones, is that it has ally reporting, so it tells you how accessible your document is, and typically a LaTeX generated PDF will be 5% accessible, whatever that means. Basically means it's not accessible at all. So this was raised outside the School of Maths as well as by people inside who had spotted this. So those were the two sort of main drivers. Something that enabled us to push it further was that we have recently done a pre-honours curriculum review. So if you don't know, the Scottish system typically has an extra year on a degree. So a BSc will be 4 years. Just imagine splitting year one into 2 half years of maths and then 2 half years of something else. So in sort of rest of UK language, we've redone year one. So that involved designing 8 new courses. So all of those are going to use this sort of system, which gives us a really good head start on that. And we're also doing an honours review, which is going to do a more light touch review of our later courses. But the hope is that anything new will also adopt the accessible approaches we're taking. We were lucky to get some funding from the university to fund small teaching improvement projects, in this case, investigating accessibility. So this is the Principal Teaching Award Scheme, or PTAS. And then Charlotte and I, who were in some sense leading that, it was really Charlotte, have lots of contacts in other schools who also use LaTeX that wanted to be involved. And the university likes cross-school, cross-college things, so it was easier to get funded. And probably most importantly is we have a very enthusiastic team of learning technologists in maths who are willing to do a lot of the work that we didn't have time to do. So in terms of what we're really aiming for is working out how to adopt basically what Vincenzo presented at scale across multiple schools. So Vincenzo said sort of how we can do it as individuals, but we wanted to make sure that this was an accessible way to do accessibility. And then also, as well as working out what to do, we actually wanted to do it and document the process so that we can sort of make it reproducible in other places, even though, as I've mentioned, we did have some special cases as to why it was a good time to do it at Edinburgh. Hopefully, we've done a lot of the groundwork so that people can adopt the same approach. There's really 2 aspects to all of this, which are tightly linked and a little bit difficult to separate, actually. One of which is on the technical part. So we made sure that we produced a lot of good documentation. We had plenty of support options. So we had sessions for people to drop in and see how things work. We had a lot of the support from learning technologists. Charlotte will say a bit more about this in a minute. And then we had some demos, including one at our all-school meeting. And then in terms of the rollout, we made it very clear that we were doing a lot of consultation and wanted buy-in from people. I don't know how it works in other places, but I can guess. But our school does not take well to being told to do things. So we made sure that it was things people thought they wanted to do rather than that we were asking or telling them to do. So we important to get some buy-in. We focused a lot on communication in terms of saying why we were doing it, what options there were, taking into account feedback. Again, Charlotte will say a little bit more about this. And the aim really was to get this done across the whole school. This is very much a work in progress.
Right. So, as Ben said, this is very much a work in progress. So basically, we roughly split this up in 3 phases, roughly. So first, at the very start of the project, we needed to pick a conversion tool. We sort of rolled out trying to make PDFs accessible very early. We turned to HTML. And we decided also quite early on to basically pick one tool and document it well and make it really easy to use, rather than sort of provide lots of different options. So recruited a couple of interns, which were 2 students, and we asked them to go interview a number of teaching staff to basically get an idea of how they produce their course materials. What's their workflow? What's their operating system? Do they use a really, that sort of thing. What tools they use. In parallel with that, we also asked them to provide some sample course materials, and the interns then took those and tested a bunch of different tools that we knew about with those course materials, just to see, what the output looked like, how much work there was in advance in kind of converting your source document to something that would produce an acceptable result. But they tested all of that and they started documenting all of that too. So we had a few sort of non-negotiable requirements for that guided our choice of tool. It needs to be easy to install and to set up on multiple platforms, operating systems, on personal computers, as well as on managed university machines. It needs to be easy to use with existing materials. So one important thing is we didn't want to ask, the whole philosophy behind the project is we want to ask the absolute minimum workload commitment from colleagues to be able to do this. So that includes, we don't want to ask people to do some extensive rewrite or restructure of their existing course materials. It needs to be, relatively easy to support, free and open source, importantly, actively maintained. And very importantly, the quality of the output should be nice, basically something that even someone without particular accessibility needs would be happy to use and to read and to produce. So that both in terms of not mangling the mathematical notation, obviously, or the sectioning or whatever, the layouts, but also just something that looked nice and felt nice to use. So we tested a bunch of tools. In the end, basically, it was between Chiron and BookML, which both do kind of very similar things. We decided to go for BookML sort of because we wanted to pick one. One factor in that decision was it just seemed a little bit easier to sort of throw an existing file at it without too much, without basically barely any work ahead of that to change that source or to restructure it so that it would work with the tool. You just sort of throw a file at it, and most of the time it produces something pretty good. But yeah. So once we decided, we talked some more with staff. So as Ben mentioned, we did do, we think is a lot of consultation. I don't think there's ever enough, but we really tried to involve people as much as possible, involve colleagues as much as possible. So as I've said, finding out what people's workflows look like. We didn't want to ask them to change anything about how they're doing things. We also asked teaching staff to basically give us their absolutely essential LaTeX packages that they would consider that they would need non-negotiably to write their course materials. So with that, we compiled a big list of basically what sort of the school overall would consider like an essential packages. I'll come back to what we did with that in a minute. We also talked a lot and exchanged a lot with Vincenzo as a developer of BookML. We made so many requests and asked him so many questions. He's been a very, very responsive developer, so we're very grateful for that. One of the really key things that he provided was a Docker image, which basically bypasses a lot of the installation and setup issues. So that's been really, really useful to have. In parallel of that, we also sort of prepared the sort of technical ground in advance of rolling this out. So by further testing the kind of workflow for producing a document, documenting it thoroughly, preparing guidance, step-by-step guides on like how to go from your text file to your HTML course materials on your VLE, in our case on Ultra. We also, well, the learning technology team basically accepted to not only be signposted very clearly for support tickets, but also they accepted to basically set up, well, get the BookML set up on their own machines and take requests for converting course materials by email. So we also offered the option for people to just send a zip file with their text files to the learning technology team and be emailed back with the HTML version, basically. So, yeah, in the testing, basically we sort of tested all the essential packages that people had given us and checked how that worked with BookML. Most of them worked fine. Some of them needed workarounds, some of them didn't work. But we're still kind of in the process of documenting all of that. So once that was all ready, and so people in the school were already aware of the project because I sent some emails around to ask for volunteers for interview initially and testing, etc. But we did a kind of announcement and a short demonstration, just like Vincenzo just did with the video, at our all staff meeting, just sort of once a semester, general information. We had a 5-minute slot, which was quite challenging, but we did a short demo and we followed it up with email communication saying, this is how it works. This is the guidance, the step-by-step guides, the documentation. This is a couple different ways to do it. Email the learning technology team if you need. And here are some upcoming drop-in clinics. So exactly the same way that Leeds has run them. Then, so we started obviously getting support requests. So responding to those, was very useful to kind of iterate on the guidance documents and on the process. We also asked people to give us feedback, not just on the process and the workflow, but also on the guidance documents, were they sufficient for people to produce documents easily, basically. We've also been taking part since then in kind of course design discussions with the pre-honors new batch of courses that are now just being written. We sort of keep reminding people that, hey, I think everyone's on board now, but that they're just going to write something that's going to look like, that's going to be accessible. With that in mind, we're just finishing to prepare templates for those with the kind of list of essential packages, tested workarounds for those that didn't work. But we're going to provide those for new courses with a nice university logo and everything. And we're also preparing a kind of bank of workaround and snippets for people to sort of paste into their documents for packages and things that are used quite often that we know don't work. So that's in progress. Back to Ben.
I'm going to be relatively quick on this. I just want to highlight the things that are important, that we think are important. If anybody does want to try this at their institution and wants to get in touch, we're very happy to talk to you. Consultation is very important, especially not making it clear that this is not a top-down request/demand, but something that we should be doing together and is actually worthwhile. That goes hand in hand with informing and educating people about accessibility in general. We have been very clear to acknowledge that what we're doing is not perfect and it's a work in progress, and there's lots of things where you might have to do a workaround. It might not be exactly what you want, but it's better than many of the other options. As Vincenzo mentioned, there's lots of reasons to do accessible documents, and we've been very careful to make sure that this is clear and it's not just for people who want to use a screen reader. And the other thing is, which was related to what Vincenzo said about being able to have the HTML and PDF, is we're not asking people to change to one format. There's reasons why you would want many different formats, and this is about making lots of formats easily available to everybody, which is a win as of itself. Making it easy for people to use it is very important. That's included a lot of testing and documentation. Rolling it out has been in the standard cycle quite helpful because it's picked up a lot of other issues. We've got a lot more testers now, so we think we've identified quite a lot of the common issues, almost certainly not all of them. And then we've had a few colleagues who have been really helpful in taking it on board and running with it, so that people can see that it is doable without too much effort, and you get this small but critical mass of people, and then people will even more easily get on board. And obviously, I again want to thank our learning technology team who have been brilliant in all of this. And then in terms of what's next, there's short-term stuff. So we are hoping to have the guidance and templates available as open resources. Vincenzo mentioned the Overleap workflow. We're going to look at that with a school GitHub account. We're looking at implementing it with Beamer. So again, Vincenzo's been looking at this. And then we're also going to provide some guidance for Markdown-based workflows. So these slides were done with Markdown, and we just want an alternative for people who might not care so much about having a vast amount of material already in LaTeX. In the slightly longer term, we're hoping to work with the University Disability and Learning Support Service to do a full accessibility review. And then the plan, which was part of the grant proposal, is to roll it out in other schools based on what's done in maths. We're hoping that'll be relatively straightforward because LaTeX users in other schools tend to be in the minority anyway, so we're keen to get their hands on whatever will help. And then in the longer term, with some unspecified timeline, we want to get some evidence about the success or lack of the project, including surveying staff and students. We would like to produce a proper sort of adoption toolkit for other institutions. Again, if you want to talk to us, we're very happy to talk. Get in touch even if we've not got around to doing this yet. Ideally, we'd like more central support from the university, in particular, some IT infrastructure and somebody who knows what LaTeX is in central IT would be helpful. And then just a couple of acknowledgements. Thanks again to Vincenzo. Probably that is the only reason we've actually got anywhere with it is because of all of his help and the learning technologists. And we had a couple of great student interns, and they were funded by this PTAS thing. So thanks. That's it from us.
And I just want to say that Hayden from our learning technology team should be, yes, he is on the call as well. So if people have questions here, hi Hayden.
Right, well, yeah, thanks very much. So we give a round of applause. You can also react. There's a little button down there. There's got a little heart on it these days. You can do claps with that as well. So I've asked people to ask any questions using the Q&A feature. So I did that a couple of minutes ago, and nobody's put any questions in yet. You must have some questions. Or you're all keen to have it adopted. You've already done it. Right. So, I mean, maybe I could ask a question then. I mean, certainly in England, yeah, we have this requirement that we do this, that we change things into, you don't using screen readers. I mean, have you got any experience of trying to, well, some colleagues might not want to do that, right? They might not get around to it or whatever. I mean, how do you deal with that? So I don't know. We can ask from the people from Leeds and the people from Edinburgh separately.
So we have not in any way got anywhere near all of our courses being accessible at all. I mean, I suspect essentially none of them are currently accessible, other than people who used it this year that we've developed. So there's at least one course that is accessible, because somebody was talking about it the other day. I think we're going to have the usual problem with colleagues who don't want to do anything, which is they just don't do it. So that will then go to head of school for him to send them a reminder email to do it. But we have lots of things in the school that we don't get people to do that they're supposed to do. So this is just going to go on the list, I think. I don't have a much more positive answer.
I think, I mean, we'll probably get, I would say, we'll probably get fewer of these people because we've really made a lot of efforts in involving people early. And there's kind of a balance between doing a lot of the groundwork on our side and presenting a solution that's kind of usable and user-friendly, but still involving people in the whole process to sort of make it feel like it's a school project. It's all of us doing that. So I think that will help in, not just sort of presenting a fully baked thing to people and say, now you have to use this. But yeah, we will see.
Just for context, we've got over 100 courses.
Yeah.
So. Right. Yeah. Yeah. There's often a lot of courses to be done.
I'd just like to add to that, and also thinking back to my my chart of if all your students have only seen HTML in their first 3 years of studies, it's going to be a lot harder for one holdout to insist on not changing over. I mentioned students not being particularly forthcoming with these things. I think that would change very strongly when they're not going through a degree where there is a big mix of resources, when there is a dominant tendency to use HTML. I think not using it will be more comment worthy in the future.
Right. Okay, thanks. I think we don't have much time left. We've got lots of questions now. But I think the one that might be most important to various people is there's one from Stephen Bolton, which is saying, Charlotte, how much work was involved in taking requests for converting materials? I think that's quite important.
If you don't mind me jumping in to flesh that question out a little bit, we've got a project ongoing at Durham University where I work at the moment to make use of Chiron, and we're doing it for the Faculty of Science, and we've put some publications and stuff out there. We've had a few queries in, but it's largely falling on either myself or a colleague called Ross Parker, who works in our Centre for Academic Development, to try and get to the bottom of these when they come in. And if we can't resolve them, we're in contact with Christian Lawson Perfect, who I notice is on the call from Newcastle as well. But the rest of my team members, who are maybe a little bit less familiar with stuff to do with LaTeX than I am, and I'm certainly no expert by any stretch of the imagination, I think we're filled with horror at the idea that this inbox is going to fill up with these completely incomprehensible and unsolvable problems. So I'm just wondering, when you said during your phase 2 of implementation, I think it was, you said that you put up a learning technology team to take requests for converting materials. I mean, presumably that had a load of training for those individuals because they wouldn't necessarily have been LaTeX natives.
Can I ask Hidden to answer that, actually?
Hello. I am a mathematician originally, so LaTeX for me wasn't too much of a problem. A lot of the conversions was just whacking it through Docker. So it wasn't too labor intensive. There was a couple that ended up having to be doing different solutions for HTML and LaTeX, which, because of what I do the rest of my time, wasn't too difficult for me to understand because I know HTML and know LaTeX. But I would understand that that might be difficult for other learning technologists.
Yeah, I think
but
the
we
fear,
have an
I think
in-school
the fear enough,
team.
we're all quite sort of tidy with HTML, but the LaTeX technology is much more varied, should we say? And I think that fills a lot of my colleagues with fear that we might be bombarded. And we have, I mean, we're clearly behind the curve in terms of the work that you guys have done at Leeds and Edinburgh. By the sound of it, we need to do a lot more work accessibility wise, but at the moment I think one of the points you made about having some kind of central resource of people who know LaTeX and people who are in a position to support this kind of work going forward is something that maybe we need to think harder about in other institutions.
Right. Indeed. Yeah, I think so. I think all institutions have got to think about that. So shall we move on to another question? There was another one that intrigued me from Neil Madden saying, any luck converting Beamer to HTML? I think the answer is going to be no on that, or perhaps Vincenzo knows.
So my presentation was in Beamer, but what you saw was a web page. But not yet. Let me say, not yet. I'm hoping to get something by next academic year that is usable for BookML.
Right. Okay. And I think another question here was to do with Moodle. So Tom Bennett asked, when an HTML output is generated, how do I put it on the Moodle page, for example? I think that's like we do with Blackboard Ultra. We use SCORM. So I mean, is it same on Moodle? Do you know?
I think you can just upload native HTML onto it because we've used it for other things in the school.
I believe that SCORM it's one of these sort of industry agreed upon standards, and I think Moodle is one of the signatories to SCORM, so there should be an import SCORM, but I've never used Moodle myself, so I can't say with any authority, but I think SCORM is not a Blackboard specific format, and it is agreed upon as a standard format for VLEs.
You can upload
this is
SCORM.
Tom, sorry. Yeah, just yeah, because I've seen the word SCORM floating around before. It's just mainly because I don't really know anything about HTML, you know, like the sort of overleaf GitHub Docker stuff is kind
SCORM
of all over the place. But yeah,
SCORM in particular is just a wrapper for what you
Okay.
put in. It's a zip file. It's got a file in it that says this is what's in me, and then you give it to your VLE, and that reads that and does it. So it's not it's a fairly universal thing, I think.
Yeah, because I have been looking kind of on and off of this stuff for a while now, so I was really glad to see it today. It's really, really good. And you know, at Kent we're trying to, you know, we're having a redesign at the moment. We're basically trying to push this for basically everything because it has to be done. There's no two ways about it. And one of the main things I was thinking about is I don't really know anything about HTML really, so you know, I know that's, you know, that's what websites are written in, but when I then generate a HTML file, I was just worried about how do I actually then put it on the page, because obviously with a PDF file you just put it on the page and you click it and it opens. So if you just sort of upload it as a SCORM thing or whatever, then if you can just click it and it opens like as if it were a PDF file, but now they're looking at HTML instead, then that sounds really good.
Yeah, I think that's how it should go. I'm aware that we're over time and we haven't managed to answer all the questions. So I mean, I think maybe we've recorded the questions, and maybe if I could ask the speakers to maybe answer them offline, that could be good. So shall we just draw it to a close there? And if we could thank the speakers once again for some, you know, really great stuff. So like really, really helpful. Fantastic stuff being done here. So we can all give a big round of applause.